Hello everyone and welcome to another Enigma's Cold War server beginner's guide. This time we're going to be looking at ship strikes. As normal, I've broken the video up so you can check the time cards down below to skip onto the section that is most relevant to you. First we're going to be looking at how ship strikes actually help push the front line. Then we're going to be looking at where to find those ships. Then looking at what aircraft are best suited for ship strikes in the current version of Enigma's Cold War, and then finally go on to some general tips for how to do these missions and come back alive. So let's get on with the video. Okay, so first off then, how does shooting enemy ships actually help your side win the campaign? Well, it's almost identical to attacking ground targets. Ships are counted towards the total number of ground units alive, and if your side has 15% more ground units alive, including ships, at the end of a tick, then your side will push forward to another hex. And if your side has twice the number of ground units alive at the end of a tick, you will push through 2 hexes. So just like attacking ground targets, attacking naval targets will directly assist in pushing the front line forward and is one of the main ways that you can directly help your team win the campaign. So how do you actually go about finding these ships? Well, the ships spawn in frontline naval sectors, so any sector with a large body of water that is on the front line, that is directly adjacent to an enemy hexagon, this will spawn ships. Now, unlike ground units, which only spawn the units along the very front edge of the front line, ships instead are scattered throughout the entirety of the hexagon. Now, the good news is finding these ships is really very easy because they're in the middle of a large body of water. There is nothing obscuring them, and so simply using your good old Mark 1 eyeball, fly near the enemy hex, zoom in, and just have a look. This is made even easier for some people with certain graphics settings in which the ships will produce a large black smoke pillar above them if you've got your smoke density turned up high enough, and these smoke pillars can be visible from quite a long way away, and so you really can see the enemy ships very, very easily. On top of this, very often, but not always, the GCIs of your team will be able to see the enemy ships, as they are very likely to be detected by various early warning systems that feed into the GCI view. And so very often the GCIs will be able to see those, they can mark them on the map if you ask them to, or they can guide you in. If the ships are detected by GCI, they can also see the amount of health left and help you direct your attacks to whichever ship is most suitable. Don't worry about attacking destroyed ships, the ships sink very, very quickly, and so it's very unlikely that you will attack something that is actually destroyed. Pretty much if you don't see a ship being hit as you're approaching, it is likely absolutely fine and a valid target. So what planes can you use to do ship strike? Well, it used to be that the absolute king of ship strike was the Vigan, but this was back when the ships used to spawn with anti-air missile systems, and so having standoff capability used to be really, really key. Currently, and this is of course subject to change, only Castle-class ships spawn, and these do not have any missile defense systems. They do have anti-air AAA, but this can be avoided and is only very short range. And so having standoff capability is absolutely no longer required. Instead, you just need something that can carry a fair amount of ordnance, and particularly what is useful is something with CCIP capability. Accurate use of munitions, particularly accurate use of things like rockets, is very, very important for ship strikes, and so you're looking at things like the Frogfoot is probably my favourite aircraft for doing these strikes. A-10s also work extremely well. Vigan still can do very, very good, although you probably want to take the bomb loadout as opposed to their anti-ship missiles. You can use planes without CCIP, things like the F5, if you are feeling accurate enough with your bombing capability or your rocket capability to hit ships accurately and specifically hit the correct part of the ship. Otherwise, speed is a quite major consideration. You don't really want to be lingering around much, and ideally you want to get off your missiles, get back to base as quick as possible, and this is really what puts the Frogfoot ahead of the A-10 for anti-ship duty, in my opinion. Okay, so then on to the meat of this video. How do you actually take out ships effectively? The key part here to know is that ships do have a more complex damage model than ground units. Specifically, they are divided into different sections, and you will do far more damage if you hit the hull or the waterline of a ship. You do very little damage if you hit the superstructure. And so this is why the ability to accurately pick where on a ship you hit is very key. Although for using bombs, that's fine, they will go through into the hull anyway. Now, perhaps the easiest option for ship strike is the Viggen's dedicated anti-ship missiles. You can absolutely use these, and as I said, these really used to be the king of anti-shipping operations. The problem is that it takes 1 to 2 missiles to completely kill a ship, and you only get 1 to 2 missiles, meaning this is no longer very efficient in terms of your time. You can only reliably kill 1 or 2 ships per sortie, whereas with some of your other options you can kill far more. But if they ever do bring back missile ships, then certainly using the Viggen with this very long-range anti-ship missiles are a very good option. Otherwise, CCIP attacks really are king now. You can either do this with high-damaging rockets. In particular, on the Frogfoot, the penetrator rockets are incredibly good at taking out ships. If you hit them near the waterline, this is very often a one-shot kill. Even if you miss a little bit, it's normally a 2-shot kill. If you're using the laser rangefinder, these can be incredibly accurate, so you can neatly put them on the hull of the ship. If doing this kind of attack, always approach from the side of the ship so you can reliably hit the hull. Approaching from the end of the back of the ship is very likely that you will end up putting the missile into the superstructure and you will do a tiny amount of the damage. The alternative to this is using bombs. I've done this very successfully with the A-10. You don't need a very large bomb to sink a castle-class ship. I was reliably getting one-hit kills with a 500-pound bomb, even with near misses. With the 2,000-pound bombs, you can guarantee a kill even with a near miss. And with something with CCIP, you can reliably deliver this right onto a ship. And the problem with a bombing approach is you do have to get significantly closer than a rocket approach, so that does put you at risk with the AAA. The important thing to note is the Castle-class destroyers only have a AAA gun on the front of the ship. This cannot swivel round behind them because the superstructure's in the way. Meaning when you're going in for these bombing runs, it is best to do from the stern of the ship. You'll be absolutely free of return fire until you've made your bombing pass, and then you can already be taking evasive action as soon as you drop. If the bombs slightly miss the ship, they will detonate near the waterline. If they hit the top of the ship, they still seem to do almost 100% of their damage, so it's absolutely fine just to drop them somewhere along the ships. Those would be my top ways of taking out ships. One little note that I will have is I have experimented with the A-10's GAU-8 cannon, and this can be surprisingly effective as long as you do an attack from the side of the ship, making sure you're putting the rounds into the hull. I did this with simple mixed munitions. It should be more effective if you take an all AP loadout. Does require a fair amount of bullets. I was doing it with approximately 1/3 of the ammunition capacity, as long as I was hitting the hull consistently. And while we're talking about the A-10, one thing to note is that the Maverick missiles, although incredibly useful in general, are absolutely awful at taking on ships. The reason for this is the Maverick will tend to lock on the centre of whatever you have targeted, and the centre of the ship tends to be the superstructure, meaning that these regular Mavericks that we get on the server will tend to just hit in the superstructure, doing very, very little damage. This is at the point that you can fire an A-10's full complement of 6 Mavericks at a ship, and it will shrug off the damage. Currently, no aircraft that I'm aware of on the server have the anti-shipping Maverick, which targets the waterline, so for now I'd count Mavericks out for this. And while we're talking about general tactics here, one thing to be very much aware of when doing ship strikes is your own vulnerability. You are incredibly visible while doing these ship strikes. You'll be out at sea, so there will be no kind of ground masking, meaning you are almost guaranteed to always be on the enemy's early warning radar and always visible to enemy GCIs. Equally, because there are normally 1, maybe 2 naval sectors available, as soon as the enemy sees themselves taking ship losses, they know exactly where you are. And then once they start hunting you, you have no ground to hide behind. You will be very, very visible and really have no options in order to hide once you are engaged. And so for this reason, always keep your EWR on, always keep an eye on it, and always be checking your 6 whenever doing this. Get ready to defend yourself or get ready to run away at the sign of danger. Remember, just as with ground strikes, you want to be bringing your airframe back, otherwise you are costing your team in attrition points, undoing all of that useful work that you've just been doing on the front. And that's really all there is to it to get started with ship strikes in Enigma's Cold War server. If you have any of your own tips you'd like to add, please do leave them down below. I've had some really good ones previously. And if there's any other guides you would like me to put together, again, please just let me know down below. If you have any short questions, I'll answer them in the comments, otherwise I'll make a full video for any larger topics. Anyway, hope you found this helpful, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Until then, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.